You're listening to the Chat City interviews from 103.2 Preston FM.
And now in the studio I've got Katie Corker-Hill and Travis Pieces.
That's the one.
Welcome to Chat City. Thank you for coming in again.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
That's okay. And you're from the lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender group. Do you guys run the group or are you members?
Well, we work for an organisation called Lancashire LGBT, which is a county-wide charity that supports lesbian, gay, bisexual and trans people. Specifically, we work for the Isaac Hitchin Project, which is a 3-year big lottery-funded community development project aimed at really reducing isolation and increasing social opportunity for LGBT people in Lancs.
And I know the Isaac Hitchin Project, as you said, it does quite a lot of support for the mental health of LGBT members. Do you think this is important?
Mental health is one of many issues that do face and sort of affect the LGBT community in Lancashire on large. Isolation is a feature that kind of embodies a lot of people's experience in Lancashire, whether or not that is an ability to link in with an LGBT network in their local area, or whether or not that's kind of physically isolated, really, I suppose, because of the rural nature of parts of Lancashire. That does have a massive impact on mental health and can have a massive impact on physical health and well-being too. But that's not to say that the experience of all LGBT people is negative and that everybody does experience sort of negative health, really. Yeah.
So now they've got somewhere to go and people around them to support them, kind of thing. And I know you've got a new older and out group for older LGBT members. Is this because LGBT is just getting bigger and bigger and you've got to throw some people out and expand to another group?
Actually, the older and out group belongs to Age Concern Central Lancs, run by the lovely Drew Drake. But in terms of targeted support, I think it's important to remember that LGBT people's experiences are very different, particularly according to which generation they've been born into. Yeah. So the support that's needed for older LGBT people is very different from the support that's needed for the younger communities. So that's why we need to break it down so much.
And why is the support different? Was it more difficult when they were growing up, do you think, to be honest?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we're talking about the stigma that's spanned a few decades as well. A lot of older LGBT people have been alive when homosexuality has been illegal, has been stigmatised, and these people have often experienced a lot of discrimination and hate crime in their lives. That stays with you. People carry that into later life, regardless of the changes in equality legislation. Yeah. So that's really why that's quite important.
It's really interesting, isn't it, how different it is today from a few years back. And what about the Hidden History Project? This is where you unearth stories of LGBT heritage, is that right?
The Hidden History Project is part of Lancashire LGBT. It's funded by the Trust, the Lottery Trust, and it's a really interesting project that kind of focuses around the Burnley area, looking at the stories and the life of people who've lived in Burnley, been out in Burnley, and, you know, people who've been brave enough to be openly gay in times where it was, you know, like we say, there was a lot more issues affecting people. They have developed this really interesting trail around the centre of Burnley where people can go and see the bus station where a worker was thrown out of her job for being an open lesbian, and also there's kind of a path around the town that you can follow, and it shows where people previously met, where the local hangouts were, and so on and so forth.
So can people go online and read any of these stories?
Yeah, they can go on the Hidden Histories website, and I believe there's a phone app as well that's either just launched or is just about to be launched. So there's quite a few ways you can get involved with that.
And what's the website, you know?
Oh, now you're putting me on the spot. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. How bad is that?
Neither could I. But
if people search Hidden History Project, then...
Absolutely, yeah. Hidden Histories Burnley should bring something up in Google for you.
I'm sure they'll be able to find it from there. And obviously I wanted to talk about some of the stories that I've noticed in the news over the past couple of weeks, especially involving same-sex marriages around the world and how the different laws have been applied. I know same-sex marriages in England and Wales may be getting moved forward to March. I think it was originally supposed to be summer next year. So is this a big step for you? Do you think this is a big advance?
I think that's a really interesting question, and I think that in terms of equality and in terms of the recognition of same-sex partnerships and of LGB relationships, it's a massive step forward. It's a historical step forward, and it's really important that people are able to express their relationships and the bond that they have with their partner in exactly the same way as men and women in heterosexual relationships can too.
Exactly. And I know the Preston Quaker Meeting House has expressed that everyone is welcome for marriages there. Do you think this is something that either of you two would be interested in now that it's been legalised?
Oh, now that is an interesting question, because it is a matter of choice, I suppose, with LGBT people and the differences between marriage and civil partnership as such. Personally, I don't subscribe to any religion, so I'd be unlikely to choose a marriage with a religious element to it. So I'd probably stick with a civil partnership. But like I say, it's a matter of choice. It depends on your personal belief. And you never know.
And what about you, Katie?
I think it's a really interesting question again. I think when you look at the differences between civil partnerships and marriages and what the traditional form of marriage is, and that is a recognition and has traditionally been a recognition of a partnership between a man and a woman, and because of the religious connotations again with marriage, that is going to be people's personal choice. I have a civil partnership at the moment, and I'm not entirely sure that I would upgrade, I think they call it, which is a really poor terminology.
It's like getting a new iPhone.
It really is as well, because your contract's expired. I'm not. That's something I think I'll have a little rethink about next year.
Definitely something to think about. And on the complete opposite ends of the scale, the laws have actually been reversed now in India and Australia, which was quite a shock for Australia, such a modern country. And now India has now criminalised gay sex, and it's seen as obviously gay rights. It's been a major blow. And in Australia, they've said, that it should be a commitment between a man and a woman, and apparently dozens of couples who've just been married are now getting the weddings annulled days later because of this new law. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's really saddening. I think it's important to look at the two issues really differently, because the climate in India is very different from what's happening in Australia. I really feel for those couples in Australia that have been married and are now unmarried within a week. I think the reasoning behind it is that, as you quite rightly said, in 2004, I think it was written into legislation in Australia that marriage has to be between a man and a woman. I think the reason they've reversed this legislation is because it doesn't stand up across the board with the general legislation in Australia. So hopefully it's not a discriminatory decision. It's a decision that will be once again reversed. Hopefully. Once the general legislation is updated and it's all accounted for within there.
Some sort of law clash, I think, wasn't it? So
absolutely.
Hopefully they'll change that back. And finally, Tom Daley, obviously the big story that he made a video that he posted on Twitter, I think, to say that he's got a boyfriend, but he does still fancy girls, so he could be gay, he could be bisexual. But why do you think he felt he needed to publicly come out and make such a big deal about it? Do you think it's been made into a bigger deal than it should have been?
I think the likelihood is that the kind of environment the kind of world that Tom Daley lives in, really, this world of celebrity and this world of scrutiny, I think that the likelihood is that had he not come out, his hand would have been forced, and he would have, there would have been tabloid press about the fact that Tom Daley's now in a relationship with man. I think it's a real shame that people still have to put themselves on the line and make themselves, or perceivably make themselves vulnerable, just by being honest about who they are. I think the kind of, the words that people used were brave and, that this was almost heroic, and that he'd opened the door for young people and so on and so forth. And I think that's absolutely valid. I think that if he can inspire younger people, which reportedly, through social media he has, that's going to be positive for young people and for sportsmen and women in general. But I do think that it's still a big shame that it's still a case where people are seen as being brave if they come out and if they're honest about who they are, because that implies that the world is going to be a little more
a little bit against that.
Absolutely, yeah.
So do you think there is still some pressure on especially sports stars and some celebrities to project a certain image and a certain persona?
Absolutely, that's still very much ingrained into the world of sport, and I think that's what makes the Tom Daley, I was going to say case then, it's not really a case, Tom Daley news, a little bit more important. to represent a positive role model for young people and for other sportsmen out there as well. Yeah. I think it's also really interesting with Tom Daley, the way he has neglected to use any labels such as gay or bisexual.
Yeah.
I think that's something that's incredibly relevant to young people today as well, the idea of a fluid sexuality, fluid sexual orientation that doesn't necessarily conform to a label, which is really quite admirable, to be honest.
So a big step, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah, massive step.
Well, thank you for coming on and talking to us today. I know Drew from the Older and Out group is on this week at the YMCA. So hopefully you'll be listening to that, and thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.